Okay, we're going to go ahead and kick off our next panel discussion, and it's going to be chaired by Dr. Tom Luby. I'll let the panelists introduce themselves very shortly, but this is actually one of our most well-received panels of One Start each year, just because as startups, especially in the healthcare sector, there's so many opportunities to work with bigger companies, but it's an acquired skill on exactly how to do such. And so we're very excited to introduce our next panel. I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Tom Luby.
Thank you, Dan. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to our panel discussion. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you can, as it says, access and interact with the industry. So lots of folks here with a various different backgrounds. So we're going to go through introductions first. Why don't I start, David, with you, please?
Hello, everyone. I'm David Wilson. I'm currently Vice President of Research for the Biologics Group at Teva Pharmaceuticals. And say a little bit about my background so you can see how it would fit into the discussion we're having today. I started a small company like you guys here. I wasn't quite as young as you, but and not as experienced. I didn't have the benefit of a boot camp like this. Back in 2003, just with a few friends, we got some angel backing, some grants. And then we ended up going through a series of mergers, and I won't bother you with all the details. I think it was four mergers or acquisitions that eventually brought me to being in this fairly large, 50,000 person company, Teva Pharmaceuticals. So certainly when we were a small company, we did a lot of pitches and made deals with big pharma companies. But in the last few years, I've been more on the other side of doing diligence on smaller companies and trying to figure out how to work with them productively. So whatever minor insights I may have, hopefully I can share with you guys.
Thanks, David. Sharon, please.
Hi, I'm Sharon Claude, and I lead a group called Molecular Discovery Technologies, which is a discovery-facing group at Bristol Myers Squibb. I've been there for about 8 years, and I joined a few months after a site up in Waltham, a biotech company called Nexus was acquired by BMS, and I joined to lead discovery in that organization. Before that, I spent my previous career also in the Cambridge area, working at biotech companies, including very small ones, and so I've had the opportunity to all involved in platform technology. So I've had the opportunity to pitch technologies a lot from the biotech side, as well as while at BMS had the opportunity to hear a lot of pitches and also be part of partnerships with smaller companies that have been really interesting. So can bring that perspective from both sides of the table as David can.
Thank you. Sam, please.
Great. So I'm Sam Wu with MedImmune Ventures. We are actually part of AstraZeneca. So we're the corporate venture capital arm. I've been in venture capital for about 13 years, spent the bulk of that with a private firm called SV Life Sciences, and then joined MedImmune Ventures about 5 years ago. I guess what I bring to the table here is certainly from the venture capital side, the experiences of working with large companies and partners among all my portfolio companies. But then since I sit inside AstraZeneca, I'm seeing it from the other side as well. And I'm seeing, talking quite regularly with the scientists and BD folks and commercial folks and whatnot about, what are the things that they like or don't like about potential deals that they could be doing. I guess before all my venture experience, I did spend a few years at McKinsey. So in the absence of Lucy, who couldn't make it today, I'll provide the very dated McKinsey perspective. Which basically I think it amounts to being able to talk about things that you don't actually do yourself.
And I'm Tom Luby. I work for Johnson & Johnson in the Innovation Center that's located in Boston. I grew up in the Boston area in startup as well, so went through a similar experience as Dave, where sort of big fish ate the little fish a few times. So been through the M&A from the biotech side, spent some time at Shire doing rare disease drug development, and then joined the investment team at J&J about 2.5 years ago. So happy to share some of my insights as well, although because I'm the chair, I have the pleasure of making these guys do more of the talking than I have to as well. So the One Start team did a very nice job of providing us with a little outline for us ahead of time to help guide the questioning that will go. And I'll kickstart it with probably a question that David to start. But raise your hands and ask questions, please, as you go along. If you hear something you want more clarification on, if you want to take the discussion in a different direction, please just make sure I see you, and I'll call you out, and we can go from there. Okay? So why don't we just jump right into it? So, David, the first topic in the sort of thing is talking about what startups can get from establishing relationships with larger companies, besides being acquired, although that's certainly one of them as well.
Yeah, so I think there are a number of advantages. We'll start there. Obviously, the most obvious one is money, right? I think pharma companies, big biotech companies have lots of money, which has its obvious advantages in allowing you to move your programs forward. I think one of the advantages of getting a big partner early is they tend to do things in a somewhat different way than smaller companies that are on a more limited budget. Particularly, my background is in biologics, but as a molecule is being developed, there are always questions about how much you should do, how much you should optimize the structure of the molecule, the expression, and so forth. Smaller companies tend to, I wouldn't say cut corners, but basically maybe take some shortcuts, which is speed is very important for a startup. But in the end, what we see very often when we look at early stage assets, whether they're phase 1, phase 2, or even earlier, we do find that we would have done things as a large company in it slightly differently. We would have put more emphasis on certain aspects of defining the structure of the drug, and it's really too late to go back. So by getting involved with a big partner early, you have enough money to actually do all the things that the ultimate customer, the pharma company, really wants to see incorporated into the product. So that's one thing, sort of, let's say sufficient funding. Another is obviously the expertise you get. So within pharma companies, obviously there's a lot of expertise in terms of clinical development that you have a hard time accessing as a startup. I think sometimes through your venture capitalist, you can get some insights into what's going on in the clinic, but pharma companies tend to have a lot of expertise. The people who are there, they're veterans, they've worked at other companies, they tend to know quite a bit about different molecules, different therapeutic approaches, and that's invaluable. And you're really, obviously talking to who your ultimate customer is, so they know what they're looking for, and they can really provide a lot of guidance in terms of making sure you're headed in the right direction. Obviously, there's also, the big pharma companies are probably better than anyone else at really trying to figure out, how to put values on things, where the market is, sort of the more commercial aspects that I think small companies struggle with if they don't have that kind of big brother mentorship at the beginning. And then a third thing, which maybe sounds trivial, but it's very important when you're a young startup trying to raise money and get partners, is it's considered validation. So nothing gets companies or VCs more excited than hearing that somebody else just did a deal. And suddenly everyone who didn't want to talk to you last week wants to talk to you. Particularly with pharma, people feel like the diligence has been pretty deep that got them to a deal, the scientific diligence, the IP diligence, and so forth. And so it can be really transformational for a small company if they can announce that they've got some kind of a partnership with big pharma.
Great, thanks. Sharon, anything to add?
I'd say, along with the expertise that the pharma partner can bring, they can bring skin in the game too, and help augment your capabilities with experimental work that they can do as well. And so I think about partnerships that we have with platform technology companies, where basically they can run their platform, and so it's a hit generation platform, but they have no capability to actually, do lead optimization, do the pharmacology that it takes to advance the program. And so if you're that type of platform company, you can partner with a larger company that really believes in your technology and really has a medical need they want to address. They think that your modality or whatever will really address, then they're going to really help you get molecules into the clinic. And really small companies, it's difficult to do everything yourself. And I'd say on the sort of buzz and additional interest perspective, it also helps with recruiting. I mean, once you're bringing talent into the organization, you get that validation from the partner, you can start to build that momentum. You have a little more cash, and you build that more momentum around, attracting folks to the company if that's
Great.
of interest. Yeah.
So, go ahead. Please go ahead. Yeah.
So these guys covered the four things that I had in mind anyway. But the conversation up now is very much about, well, if you get a partnership, these are all the great things you can have, right? I think the question was about a relationship, and can you have a relationship prior to having a partnership? I think it's very important to think about, particularly as you're going around meeting people in larger companies, can you develop a kind of rapport that, even if it doesn't mean a deal today, still means you can get good feedback from them and their scientists that will help you think about how to develop your program. Anyway.
Yeah, so that sort of, well, actually, one of the next questions that sort of kicked in here is like, sort of what's the risk reward, right? So when you think about as a startup and you're starting to talk to larger companies, what are some of the things that, these all sound like rewards, right? Good things, but what are some of the potential downsides as well? And Sam, I'll turn to you and just say, from your VC point of view, what are some of the things that concern you when companies get in conversations or start to run through diligence with larger companies?
So I think the classic worry is you share something about what you're doing to the big company, and the big company does it themselves, right? So first of all, I wouldn't talk to a big company until I filed my core IP in the first place, right? So let's get that out of the way. Definitely file your IP before you talk to anyone. But beyond that, I think it's more of a myth than a real possibility, because all these pharma companies, all their scientists have their own projects. They have their own babies. They're busy people. If they want to go pick up something and copy what you're doing, they've got to kill their own project and make room for that. And it's a very hard thing to convince someone to do, right? So it happens almost never, really. It's so much easier just to buy something that someone else is doing than to try to develop yourself. And then second, you got to make the resources to make that happen. So I don't actually worry about that all that much. What I do worry about is if you're talking to a big company that is working in exactly the same space as you are, and there's a possibility that you're just providing them with competitive intelligence with no real benefit for yourself. And so that is something you have to think about. I think certainly the more disciplined and ethical companies, of which I'll have to say AstraZeneca is one of them, and these guys are too, I'm sure. But at AstraZeneca, we will be very careful to cordon off. If we're talking to a company that's working in the same space as some of our scientists, those scientists don't get to see the data, right? They're firewalled off, and then the people who do the evaluation will be other scientists that aren't doing. And really, the fear is contamination of your own scientists, which could lead to a lawsuit downstream. So I think most big companies are very careful about not letting that happen. But there is of course still the possibility that you're talking to someone who's not really serious about doing a deal, and they just are looking for information. And I think I worried about that a lot more when I was in a private VC firm than I do now, because I think again I see it from the pharma perspective. We're busy people. And you have to think about, well, who's actually trying to collect that information? Who would benefit from it, right? So the business development person, who's probably the person you're most likely to be interacting with, has very little to gain from collecting information about a program that doesn't lead to a deal, because the BD guy gets incentivized by the deals he does, not by collecting information, right? Maybe there's some scientists in a program that would benefit from hearing what you're doing, but it's much harder for you to get to those people in the first place. If you do find you're talking to someone that's doing something very similar, then you should start to be guarded about it. I'll leave it to my co-panelists.
Any other potential downsides from your perspective?
Well, I think when it comes to actually doing a partnership, a deal with a big company, another danger, especially if you really want to keep some significant ownership over the program, if you do some kind of co-development where the two companies, often it's structured so that there's sort of equal participation, or the small company has to put in some percentage of the money that is agreed in terms of clinical development of programs, is sometimes the big company can kind of force the small company to spend all of its money and put itself in a difficult position. And that's a big problem for the company and makes it vulnerable not only to attack by the pharma partner, but other types of down rounds that need to occur. And
So yeah, and the typical solution for that, at least from the venture capital side, is to say, if you're going to do a co-development deal where you're paying 40, 50%, whatever the percentage is, you also have the ability to borrow money from your partner to pay for your percentage, right?
Question. So you mentioned earlier that there's a lot of dexterity when you're a startup and that you're able to kind of do what you want with your money and potentially not necessarily cut corners, but not do something as exhaustive as you would have had to do if you worked for a larger company. Then once you form that partnership, you were just saying that sometimes there might be pressure to spend a lot more money. How often is it that a lot of startups end up spending a lot of their money trying to accommodate the needs of, let's say, like a really robust quality system or something that you may not have necessarily had tried to do, but because you put so much effort into trying to accommodate that, now it's slowing down your development?
Did everybody hear that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Should someone repeat it? It's probably worth repeating.
Yeah, I think your question is how often does it happen where a small company gets into a relationship with a big company and then the big company says, slow down, we've got to do, more tox studies, more optimization, and it's not really, you don't have the same interests. It's going to slow you down. It's going to spend your money. I think that does occur. I think a well-structured deal, as Sam was saying, should also include things so that all this extra work, the pharma company should really be paying for that. So at least financially, they're usually willing to put a lot more money into the development, and they should cover those costs generally. It's true that it slows things down. I mean, the bigger the company, it's kind of inversely proportional to the speed at which things happen. So that just has to be something that makes sense for the small company, that the value of the deal is worth slowing down at least to one or two projects that you're partnered on.
Sharon, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, and slowing down isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? A lot of times it's slowing it down for the right reasons, so you get it right the first time.
There's also the converse. A couple years ago, we bought a small company. BMS acquired a small company out here called Hyperion, and they had an asset that we were very interested in, and they had a very aggressive development plan in place for that, and we wanted to leverage that. So one of the components of the deal was that we wouldn't slow down. They wanted to be in the clinic by the end of the year. I think we closed the deal in June, and we said, we are not going to slow you down. We actually ended up beating their timeline, and it was a little bit transformational for us internally to kind of think about, the asset program, the program asset leader or asset program leader basically said, we want to be entrepreneurial here. We want to move this molecule faster than we would internally if we went through all the processes. Of course, we're going to meet all the quality, guidelines that we need to meet, but we're going to go fast. So, I mean, it can go both ways. So that, another reason that the larger companies want to do deals with you is to, continue to think in an entrepreneurial mode and remind themselves that, getting mired in process all the time isn't necessarily where we want to be. So we're going to bring that expertise and the perspective of what is a good target product profile and how can we hit it, but we also want to think about ways to do that faster. So you'll find that as well.
Any other questions while we're at this point? Right over here, Matt.
So as an investor, one of the things I worry about is one of my companies does a deal with BMS, say on its lead program, that although it's funded by a lot of the work is funded by the pharma partner, that the internal operations of that small company are entirely sucked into delivering that program, and there's nothing left in the rest of the company. And then secondly, that from the outside, it looks more and more like, the whole thing's wrapped up by BMS, which puts off any other pharma company wanting to come along and do deals or buy out the company rest, because it's basically 90% of what's going on is already taken. And if you would agree with any of that as a concern for a small company.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with both those concerns. So large company kind of distraction, if you will. So especially where you have people will talk about having a platform-based company, but your lead program is partnered. A lot of times the platform can suffer a bit in terms of development because you're so focused on trying to make sure that lead program, which is partnered, hits the goals and the milestones, which has sort of capital flow back to the company. So that can be pretty distracting as you move forward.
I think it's something for the small company, they have to manage that. They have to make sure everything doesn't get sucked into that one program, and they have a message out there that there's other stuff going on in the company that's not encumbered by this relationship.
The other point that I would just make is that valuation piece. So it's interesting that you put it in the context of other pharmas. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's always the opportunity that, somebody could partner with J&J, and other pharmas would look at, well, that really all the value's taken by the J&J program. But it actually can be, you have to be careful about trying to fundraise in that situation as well. So if you've done a deal where essentially the product, the lead product that you have, all the milestones are worked out, the upside's capped, a lot of financial VCs will be wary about trying to fund your company additionally because of the thought that, you're not going to be able to take your best program, your lead program out for an open auction. So another potential thing to think about as you're doing that.
I think the solution there really is, obviously you need to have a platform. Yeah, you need to have multiple programs, and you have to be able to partner out program by program. And you can partner your lead program, but if there's a lot of value in your other programs, you'll still get investors. It's true if all the value is in that lead program and you've already sold it to someone else, then the upside starts to get limited.
Okay, other questions? Otherwise, so this one's a little bit of a combination. When's the best time from, let's take you guys on the small, when you're on the biotech side, what was the thinking the best time to approach a potential larger company was? Did you guys actively have that in your strategy, or did it just kind of happen, de novo?
I think I would agree with Sam. Once you have some kind of protection on your IP, it's never too early to start talking to pharma companies. They're your customer. You have to know as early as possible how they think, what they want. It's extremely valuable, at least to get advice, to get in front of them, to get feedback. And usually people in big companies, they're not all very secretive and just listening. They tend to be very generous with information, and they're happy to help out smaller companies and tell them what they think. So I think it's a really valuable experience. It's never too early for that.
When a startup just having technical people, say PhD, postdocs, they build a product and the product is working. And they give to the pharmaceutical companies, they are very, very interested in this and they want to ask a price. Then people in the team actually do not know how to give a price. Yeah. And how not to undersell this.
There are lots of consultants out there that would be more than happy to help you with that. But really, yeah, you look for outside help, right? Look for someone who is a business person who can help you, and it could be someone within your network you can identify, and ultimately, if it's going to be real work that they have to do to help you negotiate this, then they'll expect to get paid. But it's worth doing if it means you get a deal done.
Right in front.
Going back to what we were talking about with budgeting, is there ever a time of year where maybe the budget's being reviewed, where you guys are more likely to kind of look at incoming? I just don't know if it's happens all over the year.
There's a dirty little secret.
It's not a secret.
That everybody, so the budget cycle goes, through Q4, and everybody at the beginning of Q1 has said, this is what we're going to get done in this year, right? And then kind of R&D timelines slip to the right. That's what they do. They're always delayed. Things don't work, or and programs get canceled. And then Q3, we are underspent. Is there a deal out there that we could get done? So
it's like NIH grants. Use it or lose it.
Yeah, so Q3 is a great time. So I personally try and queue up my deals. So in Q3, when people go man, we got to get some deals done, you have some, and you can try and get them done before the end of the year. And then you'll hear this at the end of the year all the time. We got to get it done before the end of Q4. Right. Because we're going to lose it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think almost every deal we've signed has been near the end of December.
Yeah, Christmas time.
Yeah.
Time to close deals.
The lawyers busy.
All the way in the back, because I really want to get your steps in today.
So I guess this is a quick one. How is that budget looking for this year?
Are macro issues causing concerns for you guys, or fundamentals in our industry has changed still? So how are you feeling about this year?
Pretty tight from my
There's
point of
some
view.
big macro issues. The industry's becoming under a lot of strain from pricing pressure, right? So people are looking hard at, unfortunately, at the price, not necessarily at the value, and that's likely to cause some macro issues over the next couple of years, and that will be reflected back into the amount of money that gets put into R&D. Wait, we got one here, right?
Just kind of a really rough estimate, what percentage of these kinds of partnerships sort of happen, do you think, because the pharma company targets, like finds out about the startup, is interested and targets them and kind of wants them from the outset? And what percentage, again, roughly you think is because the startup approaches the company in some way?
I would say 95% is the latter, because, I don't know, most BD, business development operations, they're drinking from a fire hose. They get all this deal flow, and it's all they can do just to keep ahead of it. So for them to then be proactive and go find something that, you're really looking for, I mean, I'm sure it happens, but I imagine it's, if you're not out there knocking on doors, you're not going to see a deal done.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I would say in that case, it's almost 100% of those deals get done, right? If we go out and say, hey, we want to get this done with you, then it's got a good chance to get done. But that's right. I mean, most of it's from inbound stuff. Right in the middle. We're on to 3, right, Dan? Right?
Yes.
Okay. So maybe 1 or 2 more questions.
So you mentioned earlier the strain with pricing issues. Is there potential for that in the future then to be more focused on therapeutics that are cheaper, lower cost, or is it still how you believe in the technology for the deal?
I think it's all about cost effectiveness. I mean, what's the value to the healthcare system versus what's the price? I don't think cost of goods is going to be a big issue in the near term.
It's really about unmet needs. So what's the biology and the medical needs driving what we're looking for, rather than the cost.
Yeah, I mean, I think as it reflects back to where you guys are right now in the startup, make sure that the things that you focus on are scientifically differentiated. They're different, and because of that, and they're going after, Sharon said, an unmet need. In that case, the other things can take care of themselves, but if you bring an impactful and different approach in a disease that really has a high unmet need, you're in pretty good shape at that point. Let's do 1 more, and then we'll we got. He's got the mic already.
She's sitting next to him. Look at that.
Sorry, I cheated my way in. Thank you. So regarding the pressure coming from pricing, can you comment to what you guys see companion diagnostics doing to this pressure?
I'm happy to speak on it. Do you want to speak on it? I mean, I think almost everyone's looking at companion diagnostics for the products now. So it's certainly a critical component to it. Ideally, it should reduce the cost of development. It should enable us to, target our therapies better and therefore price them more appropriately, meaning that, you're not paying for drugs to be given to patients where they won't work. So I'm not sure exactly what you're trying to get at with your question, but certainly will have an impact in terms of, how we price drugs in the future, as well as the development costs.
I guess, but if you're now targeting, let's say, the 5% will work, is that 5% of people now going to pay 20 times more?
If the value is there, yes.
I'm not sure it's linear like that.
But yeah. I mean, I think it's a matter of, well, what does this drug do for those patients? And it's something you have to think about, right? If it's going to give you 3 months of survival for 5% of the patients, then that's not very interesting, right?
Last question.
Yes, it's a short question. How many deals and the volume size of the deal? That's the typical.
How many deals and
yes, per year. How many deals per year and the average or just magnitude of the deals?
Probably different for all of us,
I don't
right?
even know. I don't even know what AC's
I don't even know.
volume is.
A lot.
2, 5, 10, or is it confidential?
No.
It's not confidential.
I mean, the problem for big companies is they don't even usually announce the smaller deals like with a platform unless they're forced to. Often we try very hard not to allow even the small company to announce, that we're doing that. So there's probably not much data out there on really early stage deals with big companies. In terms of big, 100 million plus deals, I think we probably do 3, 4 per year.
So for small deals, the kinds of things you guys are probably looking for at this stage, there are probably hundreds of those deals per large pharma company per year, right? For a venture capital firm, you're looking for investment, count on maybe a deal per partner per year is roughly the metric.
Yeah, so at J&J, the Innovation Centers, we've been in business for like 3 years. We publicly disclosed 250 deals, right? So you can go, but on a personal note, I mean, if I get 5 or 6 deals done over the course of the year, that's pretty good. I mean, the funnel it's pretty stringent. Okay. Thank you guys for coming up here. Appreciate it. Thank you.